Hello everyone, Mr. John here from Areteem Institute with this week's Thursday Tidbit, where we're going to be talking about fuel efficiency and the costs of commuting this way. So, inspiration is unfortunately that the gas prices are rising, are pretty high right now, but also a lot of people are going back to work, right? Working in the office again, right? So this means these things together mean that people are spending more money commuting than they have before. Or at least it's back on people's mind, right? This is a type of calculation and a type of problem that could be done whenever, but it's just back on the top of people's minds as they might be going back into the office, and we have the pretty high gas prices right now too. So we might kind of ask, okay, does my vehicle's fuel efficiency affect the costs, right? Costs, or how much does it? Because of course it will affect the costs. Does the route you take matter a little bit? So those are some of the things we're going to be exploring a little bit in this video, and also taking a look at for next week with some problems for you to work on in the meantime. So just some initial assumptions. So cost of gas, roughly $5 per gallon. As of now, this is a little higher than the national average. So that means in some places this will be lower than the price you're paying. A lot of places it might be higher, but that's just what we're going to use for ease of calculations and things like that. And we're going to assume here that we have a car with 25 miles per gallon city and 35 miles per gallon highway. So these are our fuel efficiencies there. And one of the things, this is a little bit of a preview of us thinking about the route, right? Typically cars, at least normal cars, have different values whether you're doing city driving, so a lot of starts and stops, right? Lots of accelerations, versus on the highway where you're maybe going a more consistent speed, things like that there. Now, in terms of our routes, we're going to quickly explore two routes to work. Both of these things are the one-way distances. So the first route is what I'm going to call the city route. This is just straight up 20 miles in the city. All right, so maybe you're taking only back roads or things like that, side streets to get to your office. It's the shorter in terms of mileage distance. And the other one is, well, what if you do 5 miles in the city with 20 miles on the highway? So those are the ones a little bit longer, 5 miles longer, but more distance on the highway. So maybe that's even the faster route or things like that. But we do want to compare then for these routes what the fuel costs are. And that is our main question here on the video, for the video. So we want to compare the travel cost to work for both of these. And right, let's just do this when we say travel cost here, right? Of course, it's easy to go back and forth. Let's kind of think of this as 1 day. So 1 day meaning we go there and back. So we kind of have a round trip in this case. So we're taking that round trip in this scenario there. So that's just going to affect our distances a little bit, but of course you could just double that if you're doing one way to get the full day cost, or divide it by 2, etc. So let's look at our city route first. So if we start with our city route there, I'm going to do this first time we do it a little bit slower here. So I want to just say our total distance. So the distance we travel here, let me kind of not do the units in the sub-steps, but it's 20 plus 20, so we have 40 miles in total. So we have 40 miles in this case is the total distance that we would be traveling with that route in the city. 20 miles there, 20 miles back in this case. Now, if you remember, we get 25 miles per gallon in the city. So in our car here, the total gas used And again, you can do this with units. So we have 40 miles divided by 25 miles per gallon. This is going to give you here 1.6 gallons of gas in this case. So we have 1.6 gallons here as well. So if we talk about the money then, or our cost in this case, our total cost is going to be that 1.6 gallons, of course, times $5 per gallon. So this gives us a quick review of our prices, our fuel efficiency, things like that as well. This is $8 for that cost round trip to and from work in the city there. Now, just as a thing to speed up a little bit or notice a little bit here, I do want to say that you can do this $8 calculation pretty quick, and we're going to do that for the second case this way as well. But you take the total distance, right? So 20 plus 20, then we divide by the fuel efficiency, and then you multiply by the $5 in this case. So you can do that in a pretty quick calculation, a pretty quick thing that way as well. Now, the other thing I'll say about that is that this gives you a good idea of how everything affects the final outcome. The distance is in the numerator, so there's a lot of good ratio stuff going on. Right? If you doubled the distance, it would double the cost. If you increase the distance by 50%, the total cost would increase by 50%. But that also works for the fuel efficiency. If you added 20% to the fuel efficiency, the cost would decrease by 20%. So just seeing this calculation written out one time hopefully kind of lets you see that there's a lot of nice ratios, a lot of nice relationships that we have here as well. Now let's look at the highway route, and I'm going to put highway in quotes because this is the route that has 5 miles in the city, if you remember, and then the 20 miles on the highway. So I want to break this down into the two portions. So this one does still have a city component, but let's do this the short version here. So 5 miles there, 5 miles back, 10 miles in total, divided by here we still have 25 for the city. Then we can multiply this by the cost right away. So the city portion of this drive, is going to be basically 10 divided by 2, so exactly $2 there. Now, what about that highway portion? We have the same 20 miles both way as before, except now we're dividing by 35 because our fuel efficiency is a little bit better on the highway. And if we multiply that by 5, right, we actually get here 40 divided by 7, and this is approximately equal to $5.71. So the total cost, right, we don't really care about each of those components separately, but the total cost here is $7.71 approximately in this scenario. So a little bit cheaper if you take this highway route there. Now, just for comparing these things, right? 30 cents might not seem like that much for a single day. A lot of these things might be better to compare for longer time periods. So it's really easy to do this, of course, but right, we could compare here the single day. Well, how much is this costing you per week? Well, of course, per week is just multiplying by 5. So the city route would take you $40 per week, and it would take you approximately here $38.55. So again, still just multiplying by 5 there. A year, I know, is 52 weeks, but let's just say it's roughly 50 weeks, right, with vacation or things like that, right? So I'm giving us a little bit of time off. So let me just note that here. So nobody thinks that, I don't know how long a year is, right? But you might use 50 weeks. Okay, you have a couple weeks of vacation or sick days or things like that. This is again just multiplying by 50. So the city route would be costing you $2,000 per year, and the highway route would be costing you $1,927.50. So again, still we don't have that much difference between the prices, but it does add up a little bit more. It is a little bit more substantial if you look at it that per the year that way too. And it's also just interesting, it's about $2,000 or $1,900 either way, right? That's something to factor in with how much you might be getting paid or things like that as well. And let me just stress again that all of these things are very easily ratio type calculations. If you only go into the office 3 days a week, well, to get to the second row, you just multiply by 3, right? Everything's exactly the same. Everything works out nicely there as well. And you could still do the same ratio stuff, right? If our distance traveling in the city doubled all of a sudden, well, the yearly cost would also double. Everything works out nicely that way too. Okay, so let's think about questions for the week that we'll revisit next time. So what about hybrid cars? So more and more hybrid cars are in existence now. I know there's electric cars, but that gets a little bit messy because then you're comparing gas costs to electricity costs. So let's do the middle ground and consider a hybrid. So let's first of all compare the price of a commute just the way we did it before. So this 25 miles per gallon city, 35 in the highway, right? The 20-mile route or the 5 plus 20-mile route, depending on which one you're taking. And let's compare that cost here to a hybrid model where it gets 45 miles per gallon on the city or highway. So just a little bit of science or rough idea behind that. A lot of the times these charge when you brake or when you're accelerating. There's some systems built in that way. So in fact, they might even get more miles per gallon on the city, or there's this extra electric charging going on there, and that's why they're closer, right? Your regular car typically gets better gas mileage on the highway. Here for the hybrid, things are a little bit different, and for our purposes, let's just assume it's 45 miles per gallon, both city or highway. And, right, the real question might be, well, these cars don't just come for free. You don't just get a hybrid car for free, right? So what if you're trying to decide between purchasing a normal version and the hybrid version? And right, this hybrid version costs $10,000 more. Now in question 1, we were comparing the commuting costs. So how long would it take if you're kind of trying to save money with this hybrid? How long would it take for you to kind of make up the cost when we're talking about our hybrid car there? So, right, you're probably saving money each day. How much money? Then you can ask, of course, how long as well. Now, just to make it not purely a math question, I always like to say, well, what other factors might come into play when you were making this decision, right? What real world things might you think about if you're deciding to purchase a car? Because purchasing a car wouldn't typically just be the costs for commuting, stuff like that as well. So what else might people want to consider if they were doing this in real life? But that is good for this video. We're going to answer those questions, so take a look at those, see what you can come up with. We'll answer some of those next week in the video as well. If If you liked this, please hit the like button, subscribe, and share any ideas for upcoming videos in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.